Hey folks, it's your friendly Viking friend Leif here. This video is a bit different because I want to tell you a story. A story about how I fell in love and how that affected me as a miniature painter. So sit back and relax, and hopefully I will tell you something worth your while. So a while back I got a nice email from a representative of a company I had never heard of before. The company was called Spellcrow Miniatures. The representative kindly asked me if I would be interested in showing off some of their miniatures on my channel, or perhaps even paint some of them. Now, I am still not used to being contacted by companies, and honestly I still have that naive notion that the companies are really looking for directions or something. Perhaps they want to take a visit to the ABBA museum or something like that. But I am slowly but surely learning that, well, my channel has a worth. Now, I also recently learned that even though these things can be quite nice for your ego, I mean, I am getting these things sent to me for free. Seems like a dream, right? But you have to take responsibility and ask yourself if I'm doing this only for me, or if this might be something that your audience could be interested in, or at least could benefit the viewers somehow. Well, my answer to that question came quite naturally. Eventually. Allow me to elaborate. The friendly people over at Spellcrow told me to check out their website and choose some miniatures which, well, suited my channel or tickled my fancy in some way. Now, quite quickly, I realized that Spellcrow had a massive backlog of miniatures. Some for tabletop games such as Warhammer 40k or Warhammer Fantasy. They had conversion bits for orcs and all manner of unholy creatures, and even whole terrain centerpieces that could easily crown any tabletop. Slightly amazed and disoriented, I embraced my dwarven side and delved deeper. And as I did, I saw that Spellcrow even had their own skirmish games. One specifically actually caught my gaze. It was a skirmish game called Umbra Turris. Now, I'm sure that the game is great, but being honest with myself, it was the style of the miniatures that attracted me more than anything. Now, I had a chance to order a bunch of these awesome miniatures, and I'll be honest, I wondered if they would look half as good in real life as they did on the cover art. My painting experiences is not that deep, and primarily I have been painting WizKids miniatures, which are all fine and dandy, especially if you think about the monsters, but they usually leave me wanting. So one could say that I had developed a natural defense against disappointment. Now, as I received the package, I started opening it slowly, realizing bit by bit that I was actually nervous, tense, perhaps even excited. Oh no, was I getting my hopes up? Calm down, Leif. Keep your head cool, sonny, I said to myself as I opened the package. For a moment, all I saw was teal and orange packages with strange illustrations. This was not Kansas anymore, Leif. I looked through all of the models in the package and I was simply amazed. These models looked great. They had awesome details on them and they felt like that old school style that I'm personally very fond of. Without a moment to spare, the childish excitement got the best of me as I started opening the first blister pack. I naturally gravitated towards the Minotaur, a classical creature from Greek mythology, but nonetheless an inspirational figure that you can find in most tabletop games. Now, this story could have easily been how to paint Minotaurs. But instead I wanted to tell the story of how I fell in love with the style of the miniatures Spellcrow offers, and perhaps more important, why I do not like certain models and how that affects me. Now, if you're a regular watcher of my content, you might have seen that I had a video a while back where I painted something that, well, in all honesty, scares me a little bit. Humanoid character figures. Well, at least if I have to paint humanoid character figures in the Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures line. The miniatures are riddled with details and they're very small, and more importantly, I don't feel like they're very well defined. It made my painting a much more painful experience than I wanted it ideally to be. Now I'm sure that there are plenty of miniature painters out there now screaming at the screen and clicking the dislike button, but I have a point in all of this, at least for me. As a contrast, looking at this miniature of the mighty Minotaur, this miniature made me super happy. It was crisp, it was detailed, I instantly knew what each part was, and I felt like I could focus on the actual painting instead of trying to identify what every detail was. I guess in short, this model enabled me to focus on the painting instead of getting frustrated when trying to deduce what the details were supposed to be, like some sort of crime scene investigator. Now, misunderstand me correctly. I am sure that there are plenty of miniature manufacturers that share this level of detail, but for me, coming from the D&D point of view, these miniatures were fun to paint. I became inspired for each and every step I took in the painting process. I wasn't bogged down with unnecessary and indistinct details, but more engrossed in the crispiness of the details and how they added to the whole. Now I know that some people might think, oh Leif, have they bought your integrity? Well, first off, I'm not receiving any money to say this. Second of all, most people who know me know that integrity is super important for me. Even when it's to my disadvantage, which, funny enough, it usually is. Now one could take another path and criticize me and say something like, well Leif, you're just an old man and you're bad at painting and you know nothing about the hobby. Step aside, old man. Well, first off, you might be right. I consider myself to be a decent painter that every once in a while paints something halfway good, but that's just exactly my point. Miniatures such as this Minotaur are super fun for me to paint. I get a chance to express my artistic side more because the assembly, the cleaning, and the painting came so easily. It wasn't a huge painstaking process, but more something I could enjoy. Now, as I have often stated, I am by no means a professional painter or anything like that. I am simply a happy amateur that is lucky enough to have a YouTube channel with an amazing audience of people. So take this with a grain of salt. But I think it was because of the style and detail in the miniatures that my paint job became as good as it did. Well, I mean, for my level that is. I found myself spending more, I guess, brain power thinking about the actual paint job, which colors to choose and why. The little I have picked up about color theory was put in practice, and I could clearly see how it had affected the look of the model. I even tried some non-metallic metal, which for me is something I really am not that proficient in. Now, some of you might be thinking that I had special tools or something when I painted this miniature. Well, not really. I did use the airbrush in the beginning for some undershading, and that can be achieved with rattle cans. But other than that, this entire miniature was painted using my tried and tested paints and brushes from the army painter. If I had some colors that were missing, well, no worries, I just mixed them up on my wet palette. The clear lines and easily comprehensible shapes of the miniature unlocked something in me. It made me challenge myself as a painter. Another aspect that I think was unlocked in me was one of the most common feedbacks you will hear in the miniature painting, which is contrast. It's really a simple but at the same time complicated notion. Contrast literally means difference, or to have two or more components in a juxtaposition to each other. But at the same time, it could be a myriad of aspects such as hues or colors. Or perhaps values, meaning how intense or dulled down the colors are. I really wanted to focus on contrast, not just contrast in hues or colors, but also values in brightness and shadows. But regardless, this is not a video about contrast, but more how painting a miniature you like can enable you to get energy and focus, and hopefully, in the end, you will get a better result. Now, another aspect that I can see popping up in the comments will be that, Leif, you should paint over those details you don't care about with brown and call it leather, or black and call it shadows. Well, you know what, that might be a decent way to go, but not for me. It really doesn't cut it. What I'm saying is that if I were to paint over something like that, I would still know, and I would not be very happy about it. I wouldn't be proud. I wouldn't even want to look at the miniature. So for me going forwards, I think I will be focusing on miniatures like the ones from Spellcrow that have clear and concise details that enable me to focus and challenge myself. Also on that note, I just want to thank Spellcrow for sending me these miniatures, and I will be painting or using some of your miniatures every now and then going forward. Now, in full transparency, I am not in any way economically involved in Spellcrow miniatures or getting paid to say this. They simply sent me some stuff and gave me sort of a free range to do whatever I wanted with them. That being said, I do like the miniatures a lot, and especially this style. And I do think that they have a large range with good options to most D&D character miniatures. So if there's any takeaway in this video, I guess it would be to paint miniatures that inspire you, that enable you to think about the actual painting. The miniatures from Spellcrow have done that for me, and in my book, I am wholeheartedly proud of having them as a friend to my channel. Alright folks, so if you're still with me, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for watching. A link to Spellcrow's website is available in the description below. Check them out, you will not regret it. Now, if you liked the video, then please do smash that like button and consider subscribing. All of these things help the channel out immensely. But of course, the best way to help me to make more content is to pledge a few dollars and join my Patreon. Joining will give you access to my private Discord server where me and a bunch of great people that are creative and supportive help each other out in this wonderful hobby of ours. And on that note, I want to thank my dear patrons for their support over the past weeks. And a special shout out goes to my champion and legend level patrons, Chris Sager, 4VXP, Mad Nurse, Leander, and Niklas Svedenlind. Thank you so much everyone, you are amazing. So with this, I hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you in the next video.